The offseason is a time for fans to sit back and relax. For me, it's a time to think and maybe do too much thinking, as I like to think about different topics that can get fans going. So without further ado, we have you on today's episode.
Brace yourself for the ultimate Carolina Panthers experience. Welcome to Two Growls, One Roar, the podcast that hits harder than a Luke Kuechly tackle. We're diving deep into the heart of Panther Nation, bringing you unrivaled passion, insider takes, and pure gridiron fire. From Wilmington to the cosmos, this is your home for the fiercest football talk east or west of Charlotte.
Welcome in, folks, to another edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. If you're wondering why I'm half hysterical starting this episode, that's because I am legitimately laughing that it has taken me 3 minutes to record the intro to this episode, and there are so many bad words that were said. Yeah, you guys know I keep it clean on here, but I cannot promise what happens while the camera is rolling before we edit this stuff out. And it was a wild one. Maybe I will take that and put it into a blooper reel, because it was probably one of the best ones by far if you guys follow those. But enough of that. You guys are here to, of course, hear what I have to say about the Carolina Panthers. That's why you tune into this channel and you subscribe or listen wherever you get your podcast. Appreciate you guys as always. As I said in the intro, I like to sit back and think about things. I always do, but different things that maybe I've got an idea around this, or this. And this one came up tonight. I posed a question on X. It's still going. So if you watch or see this in the next 24 hours, you can vote on it and be a part of it. But I had this concept of Brian Burns and Jalon Walker in comparing those two. And hear me out. This is not a comparison of like, hey, I wish Brian Burns was still here. I wish we didn't trade him away. It's more like we as the Carolina Panthers can look at Brian Burns as a prospect and a player that was here. We know what he offered. And so I kind of looked at it through the lens of, do we expect more or less out of Jalon Walker? 3 to 4 years from now, if the Panthers take Jalon Walker, do we think he's going to be on a better trajectory than Brian Burns, or maybe not as productive? So anyways, I threw up the question. Let's get it started. Jalon Walker versus Brian Burns. You can see here, if you guys are watching on Spotify or YouTube, it says, I've got a real question for Panthers fans. And I should say this, it's two shows, one host. Remember that if you're trying to find me on social media. Things have changed with the handles. No longer Two Growls, One Roars. I've got stuff on the side. If you want to go subscribe to the other channel, go for it. Slowly getting that one ramped up. But a real question for Panthers fans. If they do draft Jalon Walker, do you ever envision Jalon Walker being better than Brian Burns? And again, I said, I'm just curious. Not necessarily from a number standpoint, but looking at year 3 to 4, where Brian Burns was, in year 3 to 4, where Jalon Walker could be. So it's very early in the voting process. Only 15 votes cast, but it is heavily skewed towards fans believing in Jalon Walker. 80% of the vote so far says yes, they think Jalon Walker is going to be a better all-around player than Brian Burns. And I want to pump the brakes on that a little bit. That's the part of the reason that I put this together. And like, whatever your opinion is your opinion. So you can believe it. And there's no right or wrong answer to this, because we haven't seen it and we're speculating. And it's more like trying to project what we think is going to happen. Can we predict this? No. But I think personally, as I sat back and looked at this, was like, I don't know that I expect the same things of Jalon Walker that I did or would have of Brian Burns. I look at Brian Burns as like a really size-wise, you talk about being smaller. Of course, he's a little bit smaller, leaner frame. He was still pretty productive here in Carolina. I just don't know that I could measure Jalon Walker up to that same standard. This is just me. It's a personal thing. It's the way I see it. That's not to say that it isn't going to work out. But I do wonder if there is some hesitation in the building. Probably not. I mean, they've seen what they've seen. There's a lot more upside to him. I do wonder also, when you think about drafting him, sure, he would probably fit into any scheme, but in the event Ejiro Evero is gone and they switch maybe from a 3-4 to a 4-3, how would that factor in? I'm sure he would be able to transition wherever you need him to play, but also we've talked and heard about the importance of having stability in a position itself. So I would love to know what you guys think, either on podcast platforms or YouTube. Who do you think? And again, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this. This is just like hearing it out. Jalon Walker, Brian Burns. Let's kind of look at, you'd have to take like year 3 or 4 Burns compared to year 3 or 4 of Walker. And do you think Walker is going to be the better prospect? That's my question. TBD. A lot to learn. We don't even know if the Panthers are going to take Jalon Walker, so this is pure speculation at this point. That's all it is. It's where we sit in the land leading up to the draft. Now, Dan Morgan, some really good news for him. I'm going to pause before I get into the Dan Morgan news, only because I just listened to the Panthers podcast again, and this was, I guess, what is it, the happy half hour, whatever it is, with Darren Gant and Cassidy Hill. And you guys know, if you followed me yesterday, I put together an episode of Darren Gant going on the Kyle Bailey Club, talking about expectations in Carolina, saying that they knew this was speaking of Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, a project that's going to take a few years to get there as far as expectations and winning. And they kind of doubled down on that again on the podcast. They went on there talking about expectations for Carolina. I don't know if it's just being reserved and not wanting to get burned, because that makes sense too, because I feel like we've all kind of thought last few years, maybe not last year, because we were finally like, okay, we hit rock bottom. We completely bottomed out here. But at least a few years before that, you thought maybe the Panthers are going to turn the corner, and they never did. So maybe they're sitting back saying, you know what, we're not going to go out and say that the Panthers are going to be a good football team or compete or anything like that. But we're going to put them in the corner and say, well, they may be pretty competitive because the NFC South is bad. I don't know. Let's move on from that. Speaking of Dan Morgan, let's talk about this. Congratulations to Dan Morgan on making it into the Ring of Honor. And I have to turn off the banner here for you guys that are watching the live video. He's going in with a very nice class here. Dan Morgan, Ken Dorsey, Andre Johnson, and Bryant McKinney. Very stout class. Now, remember, Dan Morgan is already in the Hall of Fame at the University of Miami. I actually just went back before this episode, listened to his speech. Really good speech. It was like 7.5 minutes. Nothing has changed with Dan Morgan at the podium. He sounds the same as he in 2011 as he does today. He is the same person up there. There was one funny moment where he talks about hating Notre Dame. I mean, he says it like, I hate Notre Dame. I hate Notre Dame. So I wonder if that'll impact him ever drafting a Notre Dame player. It's all jokes. I know for sure that it probably would or would not impact it. But congrats, man. That's good for Dan Morgan. And especially, I just, thinking about him as a general manager and how far he's come and building this thing out, how good of a football player he was at Miami. I was young, very young when he played, so I have to go back and watch highlights most of the time because I just don't remember. I don't know, I was probably 9 or 10, not 9 or 10, probably 8 or 9 when he was playing. So just knowing how good of a football player he was, of course, and I got to see him as a Panthers fan here during his time with the Carolina Panthers. But kudos, man. Here's something maybe we can just say farewell one final time. Can we cue up some sad music? I don't know if sad music is the thing. Farewell, my friends, to Rock Hill, South Carolina. Official. Of course, we know they already tore this down. I just had to pull up a picture of what could have been. I will never get over this. I don't know why. It's one of those things I'm just never going to get over. But the city officially approved this for rezoning for industrial use, aka it's a done deal. And I mean, we know it. like we can go ahead and talk about what we're getting in exchange. I mean, just look at this massive complex. There's going to have multiple fields, which I know they're kind of squished in today here in Uptown Charlotte. I mean, it's just not the same. So the Panthers are looking to expand. We know they're going to upgrade the stadium. That's going to take a few years to get there. The practice facility, though, that was also announced at the same time, and we really haven't seen any news. I went on here. I've been going on because we're in April. I don't think they've broken ground on anything. So I'm guessing if you're looking to go in the preseason that you're probably going to see the same facility that we had this past year with the pop-up tents and seating. And I mean, from the looks of it, I don't think they're officially ready with the field house or anything, or the fan deck, or the improvements that are to come with the redesign and structure of this thing. It's a little disappointing. I would have liked to see it. I mean, it doesn't really affect me either way. Like, it honestly doesn't. But as a fan that thinks about what we're missing or not getting or didn't get with Rock Hill, when you think about traveling up to training camp and participating for those 2-ish weeks that you get to go and see the practices, it would have been nice to have a little bit of upgrade, because I know there's vendors on site. They had like Bojangles and a few other things, concessions. It would have been nice to have some of the food trucks that would be a part of this new restructured model, temporary food, having an elevated seating area, which that probably would be for VIPs, PSL ticket owners, and all that stuff. But either way. So, folks, that's going to wrap for today's episode. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Mock draft season is here. Again, I'll continue to say that mock draft 1 and 2 are out. We're doing 3 tomorrow, expanding into the 3rd round. But as always, this is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.